It's that flow, no, she my flow. Yeah, 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 yeah. It's that
How it became normal to ignore texts and emails. The defining feature of conversation is the expectation of a response. It would just be a monologue without one. In person, or on the phone, those responses come astoundingly quickly. After one person has spoken, the other replies in an average of just 200 milliseconds. In recent decades, written communication has caught up or at least come as close as it's likely to get to mimicking the speed of regular conversation, until they implant thought-to-text microchips in our brains. It takes more than 200 milliseconds to compose a text, but it's not called instant messaging for nothing. There is an understanding that any message you send can be replied to more or less immediately. But there is also an understanding that you don't have to reply to any message you receive immediately. As much as these communication tools are designed to be instant, they are also easily ignored. And ignore them we do. Texts go unanswered for hours or days, emails sit in inboxes for so long that sorry for the delayed response has gone from earnest apology to punchline. People don't need fancy technology to ignore each other, of course. It takes just as little effort to avoid responding to a letter, or a voicemail, or not to answer the door when the Girl Scouts come knocking. As Naomi Barron, a linguist at American University who studies language and technology, puts it, we've dissed people in lots of formats before. But what's different now, she says, is that media that are in principle asynchronous increasingly function as if they are synchronous. The result is the sense that everyone could get back to you immediately, if they wanted to, and the anxiety that follows when they don't. But the paradox of this age of communication is that this anxiety is the price of convenience. People are happy to make the trade to gain the ability to respond whenever they feel like it. While you may know, rationally, that there are plenty of good reasons for someone not to respond to a text or an email, they're busy, they haven't seen the message yet, they're thinking about what they want to say. It doesn't always feel that way in a society where everyone seems to be on their smartphone all the time. A Pew survey found that 90% of cell phone owners frequently carry their phone with them, and 76% say they turn their phone off rarely or never. In one small 2015 study, young adults checked their phones an average of 85 times a day. Combine that with the increasing social acceptability of using your smartphone when you're with other people, and it's reasonable to expect that it probably doesn't take that long for a recipient to see any given message. You create for people an environment where they feel as though they could be responded to instantaneously, and then people don't do that. And that just has anxiety all over it, says Sherry Turkle, the director of the Initiative on Technology and Self at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It's anxiety-inducing because written communication is now designed to mimic conversation, but only when it comes to timing. It allows for a fast back-and-forth dialogue, but without any of the additional context of body language, facial expression, and intonation. It's harder, for example, to tell that someone found your word choice off-putting, and thus to correct it in real time, or try to explain yourself better. When someone's in front of you, You do get to see the shadow of your words across someone else's face, Turkle says. In last month's viral New Yorker short story Cat Person, a young woman embarks on a failed romantic relationship with a man she meets at the movie theater where she works. They only go on one date in the story. They get to know each other primarily over text. When the affair ends messily, it reveals not only how the bubble of romantic expectations can be popped by reality's needle, but also how weak digital communication is as a scaffolding on which to build an understanding of another person. In an interview, the story's author, Kristen Rupadian, said the piece was inspired by the strange and flimsy evidence we use to judge the contextless people we meet outside our existing social networks, whether online or off. Indeed, even for the people we already know, we increasingly rely on contextless forms of communication. This puts an unusually large burden on the words themselves, and maybe some emojis, to convey what is meant. And each message, and each pause in between messages, takes on outsized importance.